Hey guys, tonight we sneak into the torchlit heart of Renaissance Rome, October 1492, where ancient stone walls echo with scheming footsteps and the sharp tang of incense thickens the Vatican air. You're not a guest at some polite dinner party tonight. You're pressed shoulder to shoulder with bishops, mercenaries, and suspiciously well-dressed strangers. The Sistine Chapel hasn't yet worn Michelangelo's paint, but there's enough gilded marble and candlelight here to blind you. Out in the street, the crowds see the pilgrims, thieves, beggars, bankers, the full spectrum of humanity, all craning their necks for news that Rodrigo Borgia, the ambitious Spaniard, has just been elected Pope Alexander VI. The city bristles with anticipation, and the taste of coming scandal is so thick you could slice it with a ceremonial dagger. The Borgia family, infamous and unmistakable, is about to snatch the highest seat in Christendom. Rome is restless. The world's holiest city is suddenly its most dangerous playground. You, my friend, are standing at the crossroads of power, lust, and ambition, so close to the action that you might just catch a stray poisoned ring. Good luck surviving the night. Tonight's tale: Incest, the Pope's Whore, and the Royal Bastardess, Lucrezia Borgia. Comment your city and what time it is right now. Would you have made it through a Renaissance midnight in Rome? If you're ready for the Borgia reality, stick around, because once you step into Lucrezia's world, nobody gets out spotless. Let's go. The night outside is thick with the fragrance of tallow smoke and roasting chestnuts, but inside the Vatican, a different feast is unfolding. Cardinals whisper, exchanging glances over goblets of Sicilian wine, and servants scurry, eyes cast low, afraid to meet the gaze of their new Spanish overlords. Rodrigo Borgia's ascent isn't just a family win, it's a seismic shock that ripples from the alleys of Trastevere to the thrones of France and Spain. You slip past a hulking Swiss guard, his halberd polished to a menacing gleam, and find yourself in a drafty corridor just off the papal apartments. The air vibrates with tension. Everyone knows the Borgias are coming, but nobody's sure how much blood that will mean. The Vatican, officially the beating heart of Christianity, is about to become a stage for backroom deals, private vendettas, and a rotating cast of courtesans and killers. You can practically hear the dice rolling in the devil's palm. You peek through an archway and catch a glimpse of the man himself. Rodrigo Borgia, Pope Alexander VI, a hulking presence in crimson robes, face beaded with sweat from the effort of wrangling votes, alliances, and at least one secret lover. His voice booms as he orders more wine. His laughter is a little too loud, echoing through marble halls that have seen more pious popes, but few more cunning. Next to him, a girl in gold-stitched brocade tries to hide her amusement. This is Lucrezia, not yet the notorious Borgia whore, but just a sharp-eyed teenager with a front-row seat to the world's greatest soap opera. Nobody here thinks the new pope is going to be boring. Rome has endured war, plague, and bad art. But the Borgias are something special. Their name carries a charge, half promise, half threat. You brush past a group of clerics muttering about simony. That's the buying and selling of church offices, in case your medieval Italian is rusty, and realize the Borgia family is already reordering Rome like pieces on a chessboard. Promotions, banishments, sudden marriages, everything's up for grabs. Down a shadowy corridor, you catch the scent of perfume and hear the soft giggle of a child. The Borgia children, Cesare, Juan, Joffre, and of course Lucrezia, have been swept into the heart of Vatican intrigue. Not exactly your average after-school club. By the time you blink, you're standing in the middle of a palace that's more fortress than home, where every tapestry could be hiding a spy and every smile could be a trap. Lucrezia's childhood isn't all sugar and lullabies. It's politics, whispered threats, and lessons in how to survive. Out in the piazza, the crowds erupt. News of Rodrigo's victory spreads like wildfire. Some cheer, some curse, and some slip off into the shadows to plot revenge. You spot a few masked figures in velvet cloaks moving with unusual confidence. Friends of the Borgias or enemies waiting for the perfect moment. Rome is a city that knows how to keep secrets, but tonight every secret feels like it might be yours. Back inside, the Borgias gather for a private family meeting. Candles flicker, casting tall, monstrous shadows on the frescoed walls. Rodrigo sits at the head of a table, Cesare by his side. A young man already famous for his violent temper and alarming ambition. One, the favorite, tries to act dignified but keeps fiddling with a gold ring. Lucrezia, barely 14, absorbs it all. Even the family dog looks nervous. Rodrigo lays out the future in frank terms. The Borgia family is going to rule, not just spiritually but politically, and every child will play a part. There's no room for sentimentality, only strategy. Marriages will be arranged, titles bestowed, and enemies crushed. If you're hoping for a group hug, you're in the wrong century. You watch Lucrezia as she nods, face composed but eyes wide with calculation. She's clever, that's clear, and she's learned early that in this family, love is always tangled up with loyalty and danger. Across the table, Cesare smirks. You get the feeling he's just as likely to stab you as toast you. For a brief moment, you wonder what's in the wine, just wine, or something a little more persuasive. As the night drags on, you wander through the palace. Servants polish silver that will soon be stolen. Musicians rehearse madrigals they hope won't get them beheaded. And scribes copy official documents that could change the fate of kingdoms. The Borgia name is suddenly on everyone's lips. Some say it with fear, some with envy, and a few with poorly concealed admiration. You slip into the chapel, where Lucrezia kneels, hands folded in prayer. Is she praying for strength or for escape? Her golden hair glows in the candlelight, a soft halo in a city that's anything but angelic. Behind her, a tapestry depicting Saint Sebastian riddled with arrows. Feels like a warning. Rome is beautiful, yes, but it's never been safe. Not for saints, and definitely not for Borgias. A little later, in a quieter corner, you overhear two clerks debating whether Rodrigo's papacy is legitimate. The word antipope is tossed around, along with more colourful terms. You stifle a laugh. If these men knew what the next few years had in store, they'd invest in stronger locks and a good supply of antidotes. Outside, thunder rolls. The city shudders, as if it knows what's coming. The Borgias have always been controversial, Spanish, ambitious, and skilled in the art of making enemies. With Alexander VI on the throne, the lines between sacred and profane are about to get blurrier than your vision after a night of Borgia wine. As dawn creeps in, you wander the now quiet corridors. The celebrations have faded, replaced by the hush of plotting. Servants sweep up spilled wine and broken glass, erasing the evidence of excess. But you know the real mess is just beginning. Lucrezia sleeps behind a locked door, her dreams surely tangled with visions of power, danger, and maybe, just maybe, escape. You head out into the courtyard, the air damp and chilly. Rome is waking up, its ancient stones ready for another day of secrets. The Borgias are in charge now, and nothing, absolutely nothing, will ever be the same. You catch a glimpse of a graffiti scrawl, "Beware the Spanish Pope." You might want to listen. So here you are, a spectator, maybe even a participant in the opening act of a historical drama, where every smile is a mask, and every secret could get you killed. The city buzzes with rumours that the new Pope bought his victory with gold and promises that his children are already being lined up for royal marriages, that the church is about to become one very dysfunctional family reunion. And as you slip back through the twisting alleys of Rome, the moon setting behind a web of steeples and ruins, you realise this is just the beginning. The stakes are higher than ever, and for Lucrezia, the game is only starting. Rome is a city where fortunes turn on a dime, and the Borgias are the ones flipping the coin. But don't worry, you've got a front row seat. Just try not to get any Borgia blood on your shoes. You wake to bells tolling, deep rolling thunder that rattles the city's bones and stirs pigeons from every rooftop. The Borgias, you quickly realise, waste no time. It's day one of their new world order, and every corner of Rome is already changing shape to fit the family's ambitions. If you'd hoped for a leisurely Renaissance breakfast, forget it. There's a scramble on every street as powerful men jockey for favour, schemers line up outside the papal apartments, and old enemies quietly disappear. Welcome to the Borgia family's power game. Winner takes all, and the losers don't even get a nice gravestone. You make your way through a marketplace thick with chatter and the slightly alarming aroma of goat cheese. Gossip is currency here, and today's hottest commodity is all things Borgia. A butcher hands out sausages and rumours in equal measure. Did you? The new Pope's daughter will be queen somewhere by Christmas. His son Cesare, they say, already has a hit list longer than St. Peter's. Someone behind you mutters, if he makes it that far, there's talk of French spies, Sforza daggers, and who knows what else. In the Papal Palace, the mood is both triumphant and tense. Rodrigo, now Alexander VI, wastes no time arranging new posts for his children. Cesare, sharp and restless, is ordered into the church, a career he finds only slightly less fun than a root canal. Juan, the favourite son, is showered with titles and made commander of the papal armies. Joffrey, the youngest, is matched to a Neapolitan heiress. He's too young to care, but his new wife's family definitely does, and at the centre of the chessboard, there's Lucrezia, beautiful, observant, and suddenly one of Europe's most eligible pawns. Rodrigo's plan is straightforward: keep power in the family, marry into nobility, and neutralize every threat. You see him in council with cardinals and envoys, his hand always hovering over the game board. Gold changes hands, promises are whispered, blackmail is almost a form of greeting. One papal nephew, upon receiving a cardinal's hat, is heard muttering, "Does this come with armor?" You can't blame him. The Borgia Palace, newly redecorated, is a riot of luxury, gilded ceilings, endless banquets, the kind of art that makes you suspicious of every cherub's smile. Lucrezia's room is a kaleidoscope of silks and perfumes, but the real treasures here are alliances. Every necklace a symbol, every gown a message. You watch as Lucrezia is paraded at court, her golden hair and green eyes dazzling the crowds. To her, the flattery is routine. The looks from foreign ambassadors are what matter. Who will she marry? The guessing game electrifies every drawing room from Rome to Naples. You slip into a back room where Cesare is playing dice with a Spanish captain. If you want to survive Rome, he advises, never owe a Borgia money or a favour. Someone jokes about poison, and Cesare just smiles. Nobody's quite sure if it's a joke. Meanwhile, Juan is off staging tournaments and flirting shamelessly, as if nothing in the world can touch him. Spoiler, everything can touch him, especially sharp objects. But don't get distracted by the boys. It's Lucrezia, the youngest, who's about to be thrown onto the stage. Rodrigo knows the value of a good marriage, and Lucrezia, barely 13, is his trump card. You attend a secretive dinner where suitors are discussed as if they're horses at auction. Neapolitan princes? Too risky. A French count? Not Catholic enough. Eventually the Sforza family of Milan wins out, rich, powerful, and conveniently in need of papal approval for their lands. The deal is done over truffled quail and veiled threats. Outside, Rome is adapting. Suddenly, Borgia supporters are everywhere. Newly rich, newly promoted, or just newly brave. Old Roman families mutter about foreigners and upstarts, but few dare to challenge the Pope's authority. That doesn't mean they're happy about it. In candlelit corners, secret societies grumble and plot. You hear names like Orsini, Colonna, della Rove, a reminder that every powerful family in Rome has a knife hidden somewhere. Back at the palace, Rodrigo's household expands daily. Courtiers, musicians, cooks and guards multiply until it feels like half of Spain has moved in. Some are loyal, some are spies, a few just want the free wine. You're reminded of a joke. How many Borgias does it take to change a light bulb? None. They'll pay someone else to do it, and poison the spare. It gets a polite laugh, and then everyone checks their drinks. Lucrezia, for her part, navigates this world with poise far beyond her years. She's quick-witted, picking up Italian, Latin, Spanish, and the unspoken language of power. She knows how to flatter, how to smile, and most importantly, how to listen. You watch as she charms ambassadors, consoles nervous ladies in waiting, and soothes her father's ego. Behind closed doors, she studies maps and family trees as if they're bedtime stories. Meanwhile, the Vatican is buzzing with more than just politics. There are masked balls and pageants, sermons and scandals, all colliding under painted ceilings. Rodrigo throws lavish feasts that last until dawn. Cesare slips away for secret meetings. Juan stumbles home from another duel or dalliance. Lucrezia, under constant watch, learns the art of survival. Trust carefully, speak softly, and always remember where the exits are. Rumors multiply like rabbits. The Borgias, it's whispered, are not just ambitious, they're unnatural. Rodrigo's open favoritism toward his children, his flaunting of papal celibacy, his sudden promotions of relatives, it all stinks to high heaven. Incest. Someone hisses in a corridor. The Pope's daughter is his lover. The gossip has little evidence, but infinite power. You see Lucrezia pause at a window, watching lightning crackle over St. Peter's. She's alone, but you sense she knows the city is watching her every move. By night, Rome becomes a different beast. Thieves, mercenaries, and cardinals all haunt the same taverns, swapping secrets for coin. You overhear a deal gone wrong. One man is dragged out by his boots, another disappears into the shadows, and nobody dares mention the Borgias by name. Too dangerous, better to drink your wine, clutch your purse, and hope you're not noticed. Still, there are moments of strange warmth. You catch glimpses of Lucrezia laughing with her brothers, playing music in the garden, or feeding stray cats from the palace steps. Even the most notorious families have their soft spots, but tenderness is a luxury, and the Borgia world is not built for luxuries. Every friend is a potential spy, every ally a possible enemy. And if you're wondering about family dinners, yes, the food is excellent, but you might want to wait and see if the cook tastes it first. As months pass, the Borgia grip tightens. Cesare, chafing in his cardinal's robes, starts dressing more like a soldier. Juan becomes insufferable with his new rank. Rodrigo juggles affairs and church business as if they're one and the same. Lucrezia attends lessons on etiquette, politics, and quietly how to spot danger. She learns to read faces, not just books. In a city where masks are part of the wardrobe, it's a vital skill. Occasionally, you glimpse the real stakes behind the splendor. A disgraced rival is found floating in the Tiber. An outspoken monk vanishes after criticizing the Pope. Servants are replaced with alarming speed, and you begin to realize that trust is a currency more precious than gold. Even Lucrezia, for all her innocence, is not immune. The shadows grow longer, and the line between family and foe blurs. At a private mass, Rodrigo addresses his children with cold clarity. "We are Borgias," he reminds them. "The world will never forgive us for succeeding, so we must never give them the chance." You can tell Lucrezia understands. She straightens her shoulders, smiles her careful smile, and prepares for whatever fate her father will arrange. The city, meanwhile, is changing. Borgia colors, red and gold, are everywhere. Old alliances fracture, new fortunes are made overnight, and the churches overflow with both sinners and saints. Rome has seen many rulers, but none quite like these. You wonder, just for a moment, what the city would say if its stones could talk. Maybe, lock your doors and keep your secrets. Maybe, pray for morning. As the season turns, the Sforza match is announced. Lucrezia, not yet 14, will marry Giovanni Sforza of Pesaro, a man much older, with a reputation for caution and a bank account that's almost as impressive as his ego. The engagement is celebrated with a week of feasts, jousts, and slightly ominous toasts. Everyone tries to look thrilled. Everyone except maybe Giovanni, who looks like a man being handed a very expensive, very angry tiger. The Borgias have won the first round, but the game is far from over. The city holds its breath. Alliances have shifted, enemies have multiplied, and the stakes have never been higher. Lucrezia, you sense, knows more than she lets on. Her eyes follow the chessboard, even as she smiles at her suitors. It's a dangerous talent, and it will save her, time and again, as the Borgia power game grinds on. You linger in a courtyard as twilight falls, the air thick with the scent of blooming orange trees and the distant sound of music. For now, Rome is quiet. But you know better. The city never truly sleeps. Not when the Borgias are at play. And as you slip away, a final warning lingers in the air. In the Borgia world, you're not sleeping much, are you? No one in the Vatican seems to, especially not Lucrezia Borgia, whose childhood now flickers away beneath 100 flickering candles, the laughter of cardinals, and the anxious whispers of servants. Your days start early here, because being a Borgia means you never know who might try to poison your porridge or slip a bribe under your pillow before breakfast. Welcome to Lucrezia's world, a childhood in the Vatican shadows, where every lesson is survival and even lullabies sound a little like threats. Let's be honest, your school days probably involved less gold leaf ceiling and fewer lurking assassins. You trail Lucrezia through marble corridors lined with tapestries that could pay for a small kingdom. Her governesses, part nuns, part spies, keep her posture perfect and her etiquette sharper than the cutlery. But beyond the Latin grammar and the embroidery, you sense the real curriculum, learning who to trust and who's just waiting for you to stumble. Lucrezia's father, now Pope Alexander VI, runs the Vatican like a family business. If that business was mostly backroom deals, strategic marriages, and occasionally sending someone swimming in the Tiber with rocks in their pockets, you watch as Lucrezia's brothers come and go, Cesare brooding in cardinal's red, Juan strutting like he owns the city, and Jeffrey, well, he's mostly just trying not to get stepped on. The Borgia siblings aren't exactly a fairy tale crew, but Lucrezia, youngest and cleverest, learns fast. If there's ever been a kid who could dodge a political knife with a curtsy, it's her. At lessons, Lucrezia's tutors drill her in more than poetry. She must speak Spanish for her father's sake, Italian to charm the Romans, Latin to impress visiting scholars, and a touch of French just in case Paris comes calling. You see her study faces, her real education. She reads people like some read confessionals, sensing when a compliment is a threat or a promise is poison. When she slips into a room, conversations pause, and even the most jaded courtiers watch what they say. Nobody wants to be the one who underestimates the Pope's daughter, but there's another shadow in Lucrezia's life, one that follows her everywhere. Rumors. From her earliest days, you hear them swirl like chimney smoke. Who is her mother? Was she born before her father became Pope? Or more scandalously, after? Is she the product of some forbidden union, or just a pawn in Rodrigo's games? In truth, Lucrezia's mother is Vanozza de Catanei, Rodrigo's long-term mistress. Not that this stops the city's tongues, especially those who claim she's actually her brother Cesare's child, or even the offspring of the Pope and his own daughter. Congratulations, Renaissance rumor-mongers, invented clickbait. It doesn't help that Rodrigo treats his children with a kind of proud public affection no other pope would dare. At dinners, he seats them at the table of honor. In processions, Lucrezia rides side by side with her brothers, bedecked in pearls and gold. The city gossips, of course, but you can't help noticing she glows in those moments. Unafraid, even when old men mutter about incest and abominations, you overhear one joke at her expense. There are more Borgia bastards in Rome than fish in the Tiber, not the sort of bedtime story you'd want to tuck your kids in with. Inside the palace, Lucrezia finds comfort in rare moments of normalcy, feeding birds from a high window or sneaking sugared figs from the kitchens. Her handmaidens dote on her, but even their affection is tinged with caution. One, a clever Venetian named Pippa, whispers that even the Pope's shadow is poisonous, and she means it with all the love in the world. You watch Lucrezia nod and file it away. In her world, every warning could save her life. Religious duties fill her days as well. You attend Mass with Lucrezia in a private chapel, the incense stifling, the stained glass bathing everything in a supernatural glow. Priests bow low, but you can sense a tremor in their voices, a mixture of reverence and fear. Everyone wants the Pope's favor, but nobody wants to attract too much attention. There's an art to being seen and unseen at the same time, and Lucrezia masters it young. But don't get the wrong idea. Lucrezia is no shrinking violet. She's witty, playful, and if you listen closely, just a little bit sarcastic. She gets it from her father. What, you thought the sarcasm started on YouTube? At banquets, she slips clever barbs into her conversation, and once you even hear her giggle when a pompous cardinal knocks over his own wine, it's a dangerous game. But sometimes the best way to survive a viper's nest is to remind everyone you bite back. As she grows, Lucrezia becomes the Vatican's golden girl, her hair a beacon in candlelight, her eyes wide and watchful. Painters come to immortalize her beauty, poets compare her to Venus, or at least to a less problematic version. Michelangelo, not yet famous, still owes her family more than one favor, but even as her portrait hangs on palace walls, the rumors don't die, they multiply. Every smile, every favor from the Pope, every gift of land or jewelry becomes fodder for speculation. Rome may have invented politics, but it perfected gossip. Family life is complicated, to put it mildly. At the rare dinners where all the Borgias gather, The air practically crackles. Caesarea and one feud over everything. Clothes, swords, who gets the last slice of roast peacock? Their father jokes that he has more trouble managing his sons than all of Christendom. Lucrezia, always diplomatic, tries to keep the peace. Even as she senses the deeper tensions brewing beneath the surface, she's close with Caesarea. Some would say too close. And one alternates between big brother boasting and outright jealousy. Outside, Rome seethes. The Borgia rise to power has upset old alliances and made dangerous enemies. You hear stories of poisonings in back alleys, midnight kidnappings, and messages written in code. The Orsini and Colonna families, ancient Roman dynasties, aren't taking the Spanish invasion lying down. Meanwhile, ordinary Romans watch the drama unfold with a mixture of fascination and dread. When you ask a street vendor what he thinks of the Pope's children, he just shrugs. Better them than the Medici, at least they throw better parties. But danger is never far away. One winter's night, you're jolted awake by shouts in the palace. Caesarea's horse is found dead in the stables, an unmistakable warning from some unknown enemy. The next day, Lucrezia finds a cryptic poem slipped under her door, promising ruin to all Borgia spawn. Security tightens, guards double, and Rodrigo's rage echoes through the halls. Lucrezia acts unfazed, but you catch her clutching a rosary so tightly the beads leave marks in her palm. In the quieter moments, Lucrezia escapes into the world of letters and art. She composes poetry in Latin, studies the philosophers, and listens to traveling musicians from Florence and Naples. The Borgia court, for all its blood and drama, is also a hub of Renaissance culture. Sometimes you wonder if Lucrezia would rather be a patron of the arts than a queen on some distant throne. But fate and her family have other plans. There's one thing everyone agrees on: Lucrezia is valuable. Every noble family in Italy wants a piece of the Borgia fortune, and every prince with ambitions in Rome has at least considered marrying the Pope's daughter. The line of suitors is long, the negotiations tense. You attend endless dinners where men with too much velvet and not enough manners try to impress her with tales of hunting, war, or on one memorably disastrous evening, reciting bad poetry. Lucrezia laughs politely and files away every name. She knows, one day soon she'll be told which hand she'll take and which kingdom she'll help conquer. And then there are her half-siblings, born of the Pope's other liaisons, floating through the palace like half-forgotten ghosts. Some are acknowledged, others, like young Rodrigo Lanzol, hover at the edge of the family portrait, never quite embraced. Lucrezia treats them kindly, but she knows they're pawns too. Potential allies, but also rivals. It's a complicated family tree, and pruning it can be, well, hazardous to your health. Meanwhile, Rome itself is never quiet. Religious festivals erupt into chaos, sometimes ending in brawls or bonfires. Once you see a parade featuring a papier-mâché devil, suspiciously resembling a Borgia cardinal. The Pope, amused, sends extra coins to the performers. Lucrezia just smiles and thanks him, her face unreadable. You get the feeling she understands the game better than most of the men around her. At night, when the palace falls silent, you imagine her sitting by candlelight, piecing together the day's clues. Who's plotting? Who's lying? And most importantly, how can she keep herself and those she loves safe? The answer, it seems, is to keep moving. As Lucrezia's 14th birthday approaches, her schedule intensifies. Lessons, prayers, audiences, secret briefings. There's no time for childish things. When you catch a glimpse of her practicing a dance with her handmaiden, you realize it's less about grace and more about learning to step lightly, always ready to change direction. You watch as her father prepares the next move. Lucrezia will be married soon, and everything, her childhood, her dreams, her very self, will be part of the bargain. It's not fair, but it's the way of the world. The Vatican shadows grow longer, and Lucrezia, for all her beauty and wit, is about to become the most coveted and most dangerous pawn in Italy. If you thought your adolescence was tough, try surviving the Borgia childhood, where every lullaby might end with a dagger, and every bedtime story comes with a side of political blackmail. If you're waiting for a love story, you're about to be disappointed, or at least you'll need to recalibrate what romance means in Renaissance Rome. The city is humming with anticipation as Lucrezia Borgia's marriage is arranged, not for passion but for power, and not by choice but by decree. You're at the very heart of the Vatican as the announcement spreads. The Pope's beloved daughter, not yet 14, will marry Giovanni Sforza, Lord of Pesaro, and head of one of northern Italy's most influential families. The room where the news breaks feels electric, though most faces are carefully blank. Only a fool would show their hand before the first move is played. You trail after Lucrezia as her world narrows to wedding preparations. For all the silk and pearls, the reality is cold. She's a bargaining chip in her father's game, the latest thread woven into a centuries-old tapestry of alliance and rivalry. Her handmaidens fuss over gowns embroidered with gold and mythic beasts, but you can tell Lucrezia's thoughts are elsewhere. She listens to her father's every word, not for affection but for signals. How dangerous is this match? What does she need to survive? The Sforza envoy arrives in a parade of pageantry. Drummers, banners, trumpets, a carnival really. But the faces beneath the plumed hats are all calculation. Giovanni himself is introduced in the Vatican gardens, a man nearly twice Lucrezia's age, careful in his manners, and already greying at the temples. He bows deeply to the Pope and exchanges stilted words with his bride-to-be, his voice formal and dry as old parchment. The crowd pretends not to notice the awkwardness, but you see it. Lucrezia's smile is flawless, but her eyes flick to her father, searching for clues. The engagement is celebrated with a week of processions and feasts. You watch as nobles jostle for position at banquets, eyeing Lucrezia as if she were both a treasure and a threat. Food piles high, roast peacock, candied oranges, spiced wine so strong you're surprised anyone leaves upright. The air is thick with perfume and politics. Guests murmur about alliances with the Sforza on the Borgia side. The Pope's power stretches from Rome to the Adriatic, and everyone who matters knows it. Amid the revelry, you catch a glimpse of Cesare, still in his cardinal's robes, but bristling with impatience. He never wanted Lucrezia married off, especially not to a Sforza. His stares across the table at Giovanni could curdle cream. One, meanwhile, overcompensates, joking loudly, promising grand tournaments, clearly eager to drown any hint of Borgia scandal in noise. Even Joffre, the youngest, looks anxious, toying with his dagger under the table. You sense that beneath the Borgia bravado, the family is tense. Everyone knows that the wrong alliance can be fatal. The wedding itself is a spectacle designed for history. St. Peter's is draped in crimson, the streets lined with crowds. You jostle for space among the city's curious. Everyone wants a glimpse of the Pope's daughter in her finery. The music swells, and Lucrezia, almost regal despite her youth, walks to the altar. Giovanni awaits her, sweating beneath his velvet and gold, and you notice his hand trembles as he takes hers. Their vows are recited in Latin, the words echoing in the cavernous church. For all its grandeur, the ceremony feels strangely mechanical. Another chess move on a marble board. That night, the feast spills out into the Roman streets. You join the throngs cheering as acrobats leap, fire eaters spit flames, and masked dancers whirl. Yet, for all the public celebration, the palace behind the walls is somber. You're led through candlelit corridors to Lucrezia's new rooms, opulent yet unfamiliar. She sits by the window, the city's music drifting up like a distant dream. There's a knock, her new husband, coming to claim his bride. You wait for the fairy tale moment, but this is the Vatican, not Verona. Giovanni is stiff, formal, clearly unsure what to say to a girl he's never really met. They speak politely, voices hushed and wary, each measuring the other as if trying to solve a riddle. If romance ever blooms, it won't be tonight. Marriage, in this world, is more contract than comfort. Lucrezia is now Lady of Pesaro, but she remains a Borgia first and foremost. Every move she makes is watched, reported, analysed. When she appears in public with Giovanni, their faces are studied for signs of affection or tension. Courtiers take bets. Will the marriage last? Is the alliance as solid as it appears? Lucrezia learns quickly. A real smile can start a rumour, a frown can spark a scandal. Her life becomes an endless balancing act, and you start to wonder if even the palace cat is spying for the Pope. As the weeks pass, you travel with the couple to Pesaro, Giovanni's modest court perched on the Adriatic coast. The city welcomes its new lady with cautious enthusiasm. Banners flutter, Children sing, but the Sforza courtiers watch her every move, wary of their Borgia connection. Lucrezia, ever the diplomat, adapts. She charms the local clergy, learns the names of the household staff, and writes dutiful letters to her father, reporting every detail. Giovanni, for his part, tries to be a good husband, but there's a distance neither can bridge. He's polite, cautious, but always seems to be looking over his shoulder at Lucrezia, at his own family, at the long shadow cast by Rome. Back in Rome, the situation is shifting. The Borgia grip on the papacy tightens, and Alexander VI begins pressing Giovanni for favours. More troops, more loyalty, less independence. Giovanni bristles, but what can he do? Lucrezia is caught in the middle, her loyalties stretched to the breaking point. When her father's messengers arrive, you see her face harden. She knows these are not requests, they're orders. It doesn't take long for cracks to appear in the alliance. The Sforza family, proud and stubborn, resents being bossed around by a Spanish pope. Rumours trickle in from Milan, whispers that Giovanni is weak, that the marriage was a mistake, that Lucrezia is too much a Borgia for their taste. You watch as tensions rise. At dinners, the conversation turns sharp. At court, rival factions jockey for Lucrezia's attention, hoping to curry favour with Rome. Even the servants sense the change, gossiping behind tapestries about secret letters and hidden alliances. Lucrezia, barely out of girlhood, must play a role few adults could manage. She's expected to mediate between her powerful father and her increasingly isolated husband, to keep the peace even as the walls close in. She writes careful letters, smiles at all the right times, and tries against the odds to make the marriage work. Yet the strain shows. You see her late at night, pacing the balcony, whispering prayers into the wind. If she dreams of escape, she never says. To make matters worse, the rumours haven't died down. They've only changed targets. In Rome, tongues wag about Giovanni's inability to father a child, about his supposed cowardice in battle, about his lack of Borgia cunning. In Pesaro, the whispers focus on Lucrezia, her loyalty to Rome, her closeness to her brothers, her supposed secret meetings with Borgia agents. It's a mess, and nobody seems to have the power to clean it up. In the midst of all this, Lucrezia finds small comforts. She befriends a few loyal ladies-in-waiting, learns to ride along the Adriatic beaches, and finds solace in music and poetry. The Pesaro library becomes her refuge, a place where nobody expects her to be anything but herself. On rare sunny mornings, you catch her laughing with local children or sneaking cakes from the kitchens. For a moment, she seems almost happy, almost normal. But the letters from Rome are never far away, and each one brings a fresh wave of tension. Meanwhile, Giovanni becomes increasingly isolated. His own family grows suspicious of his Borgia ties. His allies in Milan begin to distance themselves. Even his own men wonder aloud whether he has lost the strength to rule. You watch as he drinks more, broods longer, and begins to treat Lucrezia with the wary caution of a man who knows he's living with a political time bomb. Their conversations grow strained, and the distance between them, already wide, becomes a chasm. You're left with the unmistakable sense that this marriage, for all its pageantry, is little more than a polite standoff. Lucrezia remains a Borgia at heart, loyal to her father, skilled at navigating treacherous waters, but alone in a foreign court. Giovanni is outmatched, outmaneuvered, and painfully aware of it. The alliance that was supposed to bring peace now sows only distrust. As spring gives way to a hot, restless summer, the tension finally reaches a breaking point. Letters arrive from Rome, coded, urgent, and increasingly hostile. Giovanni is summoned back to the Vatican, ostensibly for a family conference, but everyone knows it's more interrogation than invitation. Lucrezia, left behind, feels the world shift beneath her feet. You linger in the Pesaro courtyard as the sun sets, the air heavy with the scent of jasmine and the faint, distant toll of church bell. The air in Rome has turned sharp as word of the annulment ripples through its palaces, taverns, and smoky backstreets. It's 1497 now, and you sense it. Something's about to snap. Lucrezia Borgia, once paraded as the crown jewel of the Papal dynasty, is suddenly the centerpiece of one of Italy's loudest, dirtiest scandals. You can't walk the cobbles near the Vatican without someone hissing a joke about the Sforza marriage. Even the pigeons seem to be eavesdropping. You're with Lucrezia as she returns to Rome, summoned by her father. The ride is tense. Her entourage says little, eyes wary of every shadow, every flash of steel. She has learned to sit straight, to answer every question carefully, and to hide every true feeling behind a smile that could pass for a saint's. When the city skyline rises through the haze, you notice her knuckles whiten around her rosary beads. Behind closed doors, Giovanni Sforza has been summoned for his reckoning. The Borgia family, Rodrigo, Pope Alexander VI, Cesar, Juan, and even the teenage Geoffrey are in full war council mode. The marriage, once politically crucial, is now a liability. The Sforza alliance has soured, and the Pope has new plans that require Lucrezia to be unwed, and ideally, above reproach. Giovanni is asked to sign annulment papers, claiming non-consummation. He balks, of course. Imagine being forced to admit impotence to the entire peninsula. His pride is wounded, his allies are furious, and the whole arrangement sours faster than week-old wine in a Roman summer. The public details are deliciously ugly. You follow servants as they run between palaces, carrying messages and rumors. Giovanni Sforza refuses to sign the annulment, so the Borgias threaten to drag his name through every Roman gutter. He's accused of being impotente et frigidus, impotent and cold, which you realize is the Renaissance version of getting roasted in a group chat. Sforza fights back with the only weapon he has left: scandal. He lets it be known, loudly and repeatedly, that the real reason for the annulment is incest, that Lucrezia and her father, or perhaps her brother Cesare, are lovers. And just like that, Rome explodes with gossip. You hear it everywhere, at market stalls, in churches, even from stone-faced monks. People trade stories that Lucrezia was seen embracing her father too fondly, that Cesare's eyes lingered too long at dinner, that family meetings were a little too private. None of it's proven. All of it is believed. The nickname the Pope's Hall begins to stick. Repeated in cruel jokes and scandalous sonnets, you walk past the Vatican and see new graffiti. Lucrezia sleeps with her father and her brothers. The city is merciless, and the mud sticks, no matter how much the Borgias scrub. Meanwhile, the Pope's public relations campaign swings into action. Donations to churches, staged displays of family piety, a few strategic exiles for the worst gossip mongers. But it's like trying to mop the Tiber with a handkerchief. Lucrezia, for her part, remains mostly silent. You see her attending Mass, eyes downcast, as if daring the statues of saints to judge her. She writes letters to Giovanni, official, chilly, dictated by her father's secretary. When friends come to visit, she keeps the conversation safely on art and music, never mentioning the growing storm outside her windows. Behind closed doors, she breaks down briefly, before composing herself. She's a Borgia after all, and Borgias don't get to be weak. Meanwhile, Giovanni Sforza's position crumbles. His own family, the Millenni Sforzas, pressure him to sign. After all, angering the Pope could mean losing Pesaro, their stronghold. Eventually, under immense pressure, Giovanni relents. The marriage is annulled on the grounds of non-consummation. For the official record, Lucrezia is declared a virgin. You almost snort at the hypocrisy. Rome's most infamous dynasty, publicly obsessed with purity. The city's poets have a field day, but the damage is done. Giovanni Sforza leaves Rome in disgrace, his reputation shattered, and Lucrezia is left in a strange kind of limbo. Legally a maiden, publicly a pariah, privately a survivor. The Vatican tries to clean up the mess, but you know better. This scandal will follow Lucrezia forever. The whispers about incest, poison, and Borgia depravity will be the soundtrack to her life from now on. The fallout spreads. Rival families in Rome use the scandal as ammunition. The Orsini and Colonna, ever eager to undercut the Borgias, sponsor sermons about the corruption of the papacy. Foreign ambassadors file juicy reports to their courts. Even in Florence, far from Rome, Machiavelli jots down a few lines about the Borgia chaos. Useful lessons for princes, he'll call them. You can practically hear the Medici laughing, and yet, even in this storm, Lucrezia proves herself. You observe her in council with her father, quietly strategizing how to rebuild her standing. She hosts carefully staged dinners, inviting prominent Roman ladies and artists to signal her continued place in society. She gives coins to the poor in public, supports convents, and is seen at mass more frequently than ever. It's a Renaissance version of damage control, and Lucrezia plays her part beautifully. You notice, though, that her smiles come slower, and her laughter is rare. One night, you sneak into a candlelit salon, where old family friends debate Lucrezia's future. Some argue she should be hidden away in a convent. Others, bolder, suggest another marriage to a foreign prince. The Pope, always thinking several moves ahead, listens to every rumor, weighing the next alliance. Cesare, his ambitions growing darker, begins pushing for even bolder strategies. You can feel the tension. This isn't just about Lucrezia anymore, it's about the Borgia dynasty itself, and what price they're willing to pay to keep their grip on power. You notice how differently Lucrezia is treated after the annulment. Some courtiers turn frosty, worried about their own reputations. Others are suddenly much friendlier, sensing a vulnerable target. Her circle narrows to a few loyal confidantes. Her Spanish governess, a sharp-tongued cousin from Naples, and her ever-watchful brother Cesare. They advise caution, patience, and above all, silence. In Rome, your greatest defense is letting rumors tire themselves out, though that's about as effective as bringing a flute to a sword fight. The Vatican, desperate to erase the stain, stages a series of grand spectacles. You're dragged along to a charity festival, where Lucrezia distributes bread to hundreds of the city's poorest. Every gesture witnessed by clerics, chroniclers, and rival noblewomen. It's a show of virtue, and for a moment it almost works. You see a few faces soften, a handful of rumors die, but the old jokes persist, whispered behind gloved hands. Watch out, don't take the bread, or you'll catch a Borgia curse. Still, Rome has a short memory. Soon, new scandals crowd the old. Cardinals are caught skimming funds. An unfortunate bishop falls out a window. No one looks too closely. By the next season, the city is buzzing about wars in Naples and French ambitions, and for once, Lucrezia is left alone. She finds time to read, to garden, to commission a painting or two. Brief respites before the next storm. But just as you think the family might catch their breath, a new shock rolls through the Borgia world. One of Lucrezia's brothers has been found dead. But that, you sense, is another chapter. For now, the lesson. A scream cuts through the Vatican's marble silence, ricocheting off gilded ceilings and echoing through the shadowed halls. It's the summer of 1497, and the Borgia Palace is no stranger to secrets. But tonight the tension is thick enough to choke you. You're jolted awake, heart thumping, the servants scurry like startled mice, and somewhere in the darkness, a bell tolls. 1, 2, 3 times, calling the family to disaster. Someone has gone missing. One Borgia, Duke of Gandia, Rodrigo's favoured son, Lucrezia's beloved brother, and the walking embodiment of Borgia privilege. Just hours ago, you watched him swagger through the palace, laughing too loud, tipping too generously, and boasting of his next military campaign. Now his bed is cold, his sword untouched, and his cloak lies discarded in the stables. You can taste the fear hanging in the air, sharp, metallic, laced with the scent of melted candle wax and sweat. You trail Lucrezia as she rushes through dim corridors, her slippers silent on the stone. Her face is pale, eyes wide but dry. You realize she's been here before. Every Borgia has. In this family, tragedy always arrives cloaked and silent. Rodrigo, summoned from his private study, looks ancient in his panic. Cesare is a storm of rage and suspicion, barking orders at guards, threatening anyone who dares hesitate. The search stretches into the dawn. Every stable, cellar and alley near the Vatican is overturned. Gossip spreads faster than fire. Some say one quarreled with a jealous husband. Others whisper he was dragged away by French spies, or that a rival family finally exacted revenge. Cesare grows colder by the hour, and Rodrigo, usually so composed, shudders at the prospect of his own blood spilled in Roman gutters. And then, just as the sun edges over Rome's rooftops, the news arrives. One's body has been found. He's floating face down in the Tiber, throat slashed, velvet doublet stained darker than the river's depths. The Duke of Gandia is dead. No ransom, no warning, just the unambiguous mark of murder. The palace is thrown into chaos. Rodrigo locks himself in a chapel, howling with grief. Cardinals gather in anxious clusters, faces pale as the papal linens. You see Lucrezia, shock flickering behind her composure, clutching Segeri's arm as if she might vanish otherwise. Whispers scuttle through every corridor. Who killed Juan? Was it a political enemy, a lover scorned, or, and this is the question that burns, a Borgia themselves? Suspicion turns inward. You watch as Cesare's eyes narrow at every familiar face. Even the servants sense the change. More than one slips away, never to be seen again. There's a list, you learn, of people who crossed Juan in the weeks before his death. Mercenaries, cardinals, rivals, and friends. It's long, and Cesare intends to interrogate every name on it, preferably with a dagger's point. Lucrezia is swept along by the storm. She mourns, yes, but she also listens. In the stillness of the chapel, she hears things. Her father's strangled sobs, Cesare's icy promises, and the shuffling feet of those who know too much. Rome itself holds its breath. The city loves a scandal, but even for the Borgias, this is a new level of horror. Some priests mutter about divine punishment. Others see opportunity in the chaos. You're there as the body is laid out for burial, cloaked in velvet, and surrounded by enough candles to set the basilica ablaze. Rodrigo presides, trembling, his papal vestments weighed down by sorrow. Lucrezia kneels beside her brother's casket, hands folded so tightly her knuckles gleam white. Cesare stands watch, jaw clenched, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. The investigation, if you can call it that, is a circus. Rodrigo demands answers, but is terrified of what he'll find. Cesare conducts private interrogations that send grown men whimpering to confession. The official report is conveniently vague. The Duke was murdered by unknown malefactors. Rome smirks. Everyone knows nobody really wants the truth. And yet, in the city's taverns and palazzos, the theories multiply. Some say Cesare did it himself, finally tired of his brother's arrogance and rivalry. Others blame rival noble families. The Orsini, the Colonna, maybe even a Spanish envoy. The most whispered rumor is the darkest, that one died by order of his own family, a sacrifice to keep darker secrets buried. You ask a palace guard his theory. He just shakes his head and mutters, best not to know. For Lucrezia, the loss is shattering. Despite everything, scandal, rivalry, gossip, Juan was her brother, and in some ways her only ally. She grieves in private, retreating to her rooms, refusing visitors. But even in sorrow, the wheels of Borgia power grind on. The family cannot appear weak. There are enemies everywhere, and now with blood spilled, even more sharks circling. You begin to notice subtle shifts. Rodrigo becomes more withdrawn, less interested in affairs outside the Vatican walls. Cesare, freed from his brother's shadow, grows ever more ambitious, his eyes colder, his smile sharper. Lucrezia is forced to step forward, playing a greater role in public affairs. She hosts dinners for influential clerics, delivers donations in her father's name, and appears at Mass with a serene, almost saintly composure. The city watches. The old jokes about the Pope's whore and the Royal Bastardess fade, replaced for a time with pity and awe. Who would dare cross the Borgias now after seeing how they mourn their own? But the memory of Juan's murder never fades. You see it in the way Lucrezia glances over her shoulder, in the way Sege's hand lingers near his dagger, in the hush that falls when anyone mentions the Tiber after dark. Meanwhile, the power dynamics in Rome have shifted. With one gone, Cesare becomes his father's right hand, no longer burdened by clerical pretense. Lucrezia, too, is drawn deeper into the family's machinations. The Pope, desperate for allies, begins arranging new marriages, forging new alliances, and inevitably making new enemies. You can feel the city's pulse quicken. War is coming, in one form or another. Lucrezia, though battered, is not broken. You see her steady herself, learning to hide her pain behind a gentle smile. She writes letters to distant relatives, negotiates with ambassadors, and manages her own small court of loyal friends. The Vatican, for all its shadows, becomes her training ground, a place to learn the hard lessons of survival, strategy, and above all, silence. At night, when the palace is quiet, you watch her stand at her window, gazing at the moonlit city. Rome glows golden and dangerous, its secrets pulsing just beneath the surface. Somewhere out there, one's killer walks free. Somewhere closer, the next betrayal is already brewing. You wonder, as you slip away, what it costs to be a Borgia, to lose a brother, to bear the Vatican gardens smell of rain and orange blossom as you drift in Lucrezia Borgia's wake, the city's latest storm still echoing in your ears. Grief for one's death lingers, an ache behind every papal decree, a shadow in every whispered conversation, but the machinery of Borgia power does not allow for pauses. It is 498, and while the rest of Rome pretends to mourn, Rodrigo Borgia is already plotting his daughter's next move. For Lucrezia, another marriage is not just inevitable, it's urgent, and this time, the match will be even more dangerous. You join Lucrezia in a sunlit salon as envoys from Naples arrive, their silks heavy with Neapolitan pride and more than a little suspicion. The Borgia family needs a new alliance, one strong enough to silence the Sforza scandal and restore their battered prestige. Enter Alfonso of Aragon, dashing, highborn, and the illegitimate son of the King of Naples. He's royal, yes, but conveniently expendable should politics require it. The arrangement is as delicate as spun sugar and twice as likely to collapse in a heatwave. Lucrezia, now more seasoned in the politics of marriage than most grandmothers, meets Alfonso for the first time under the gaze of a dozen watchful relatives. He is young, dark-haired, and charming in the way of men who know their survival depends on making a good impression. He bows low, compliments her beauty in careful Italian, and exchanges practiced witticisms with Cesare and the Pope. You watch Lucrezia weigh him the way a jeweler tests gold, assessing every gesture, every glance for cracks beneath the surface. The negotiations are a show in themselves. Naples wants security and papal favour, the Borgias want legitimacy and fresh troops. Ambassadors argue over dowries and inheritance, while Lucrezia sits serene, a silent prize at the centre of the storm. At night you hear Rodrigo and Cesare strategizing behind closed doors, voices muffled but urgent. Naples cannot be allowed to double-cross them. Rome is still full of enemies, and Lucrezia's new marriage must be a public triumph. And so, the wedding preparations begin. Unlike her first, this ceremony will be a matter of international spectacle. 1,000 candles flicker in St. Peter's, musicians practice new songs, and artists are commissioned to paint Lucrezia as both Madonna and Venus. The Vatican glitters, and you find yourself swept up in the excitement, though you notice every smile is tinged with calculation. On the appointed day, Rome crowds the streets. You stand among throngs of townsfolk, noblemen, mercenaries, and pickpockets, all eager to witness the Pope's daughter marry a prince. The procession is breathtaking. Lucrezia in a gown of white and silver, Alfonso gleaming in gold and crimson, their path carpeted with rose petals and guarded by Swiss soldiers. Bells ring, choirs sing, and for a moment even Rome forgets its grudges and applauds. Inside, the ceremony is all solemnity and spectacle. Rodrigo himself presides, voice booming over the crowd. When Lucrezia and Alfonso join hands, you catch a rare, genuine smile from her. Perhaps hope, perhaps relief, or maybe just a flash of youthful optimism amid the endless calculation. The kiss is chaste, but lingers longer than politics usually allows. For the first time, you suspect, Lucrezia allows herself a brief fantasy of happiness. The celebrations last for days. Feasts, tournaments, and masks fill every hour. The Vatican's cellars are drained, and rumour has it, even the Pope's fiercest critics sneak in for a taste of the festivities. You watch as Lucrezia and Alfonso dance together, their chemistry surprisingly genuine. They slip away for walks in the gardens, laughing softly in the evening breeze, and for a little while, you can almost believe this match is more than a political maneuver. But even on the happiest nights, danger is never far. Cesare lurks nearby, eyes always moving, and you overhear courtiers debating whether Naples will remain loyal or betray the Pope at the first opportunity. Alfonso, though fond of Lucrezia, keeps one hand on his dagger during public appearances, a habit that says more about the times than any wedding vow. Lucrezia, though, is more skilled than ever. She manages her new role as Princess of Salerno with poise, accepting tributes, dispensing favors, and quickly building her own small court within the Vatican. She charms the Neapolitan envoys with witty conversation and ensures that every visitor leaves Rome singing her praises. You watch her write careful letters to Alfonso's family, building bridges where politics would rather raise walls. The couple soon settle into a grand palazzo near the Vatican. It's an odd sort of domesticity, equal parts honeymoon suite and fortress. The walls are thick, the staff loyal or terrified, and the gardens full of imported orange trees to remind Alfonso of home. You witness moments of tenderness, shared meals, private music in the evenings, even the occasional pillow fight. Lucrezia seems genuinely fond of her new husband, and for a brief golden window it almost looks like happiness is possible. But Rome is a city of spies, and the world is always watching. Even as Lucrezia and Alfonso grow close, letters arrive from Naples warning of shifting alliances and French intrigues. The Pope grows nervous. Cesare grows restless. Alfonso, for all his charm, is still a prince of Naples. His first loyalty is not to the Borgias, no matter how sweet the marriage. You notice a slow chill spreading through the court. Lucrezia's letters are read before they're sent. Her visitors watched and counted. Cesare and Alfonso, though polite in public, circle each other like rival wolves. The situation comes to a head during a grand banquet held for visiting French dignitaries. You're seated at a side table, close enough to catch the daggers in every smile. Cesare toasts Naples with a veiled threat. Alfonso responds in kind. Outside the banquet, rumors swirl. Naples may side with France in a coming war, or betray the Pope to claim more territory. The Vatican's corridors buzz with spies from half of Europe. You watch Lucrezia become more isolated, her movements increasingly restricted by her family's fears. Even her moments with Alfonso are watched by servants loyal to Rome first, Naples second, love a distant third. Still, the marriage continues, and for a while, it even thrives. Lucrezia becomes pregnant, a sign, the Pope crows, of divine favour and the solidification of the Borgia-Aragon alliance. You're there when the child is born, a son named Rodrigo after his grandfather. The court erupts in celebration, though you catch a look of pure anxiety in Alfonso's eyes. A Borgia grandson is both a blessing and a threat. But happiness, you've learnt, is never a safe bet in the Vatican. Within months, Alfonso begins to feel the walls closing in. He's accused falsely, perhaps, or perhaps not, of conspiring against the Pope. Cesare, now more powerful than ever, sees Alfonso as an obstacle to be removed. You're not surprised when, one warm evening, Alfonso is attacked outside his own apartments. He survives the first attempt, barely stabbed by masked assailants, and carried home bleeding. The city buzzes. Was it the Orsini, the French, or was it, as most suspect, the Borgias themselves? Alfonso convalesces under the watchful eye of Cesare's men, and Lucrezia sits by his bedside day and night, her face etched with grief and worry. Alfonso clings to life for weeks, but in Rome, mercy is not a popular virtue. You begin to suspect, along with everyone else, that Cesare's ambition will not let Alfonso survive. Lucrezia, for all her efforts, is powerless. Her father, the Pope, is torn between affection and politics. When Alfonso finally succumbs to his wounds, helped, it's whispered, by an overly attentive jailer, Rome shrugs, and the world moves on. Lucrezia is left alone again. Widowed, watched, but never defeated. The city's gossips churn anew. Was it jealousy, politics, or both? You don't need a soothsayer to see what's coming next. Rome, always hungry for spectacle, can barely contain itself after Alfonso of Aragon's attempted murder. Lucrezia Borgia, once more a young wife in peril, now transformed into a desperate widow-in-waiting, moves through the papal corridors like a ghost. You'd think losing one husband under suspicious circumstances might grant her a measure of sympathy. Instead, It marks her as both a tragic figure and a deadly player in the ongoing Borgia game. The weeks after Alfonso's stabbing are a masterclass in Renaissance dread. The Vatican is suddenly quieter, but only on the surface. Every shadow teems with rumours. You can feel the eyes on Lucrezia, the ladies-in-waiting who gossip behind sleeves, the guards who exchange loaded glances, even the priests whose prayers for her seem tinged with curiosity. You hear the whispers everywhere you go. Was it Cesare? Was it the Pope? Was it Lucrezia herself? Alfonso's recovery is slow and painful. You spend long suffocating days in his darkened chamber, where Lucrezia sits beside the bed, refusing food and sleep. She tends to his wounds with her own hands, prays over him, and dreads every footfall in the corridor. Alfonso, pale and feverish, is surrounded by so-called protectors, men who answer to Cesare and who somehow always seem to be sharpening knives or cleaning suspicious stains off their gloves. The atmosphere is so tense that even the flowers in the vases seem to wilt in anticipation. But then, one sultry night, disaster strikes again. The palace is roused by a commotion. Alfonso has been attacked in his bed, strangled this time, and left clinging to life by a thread. The protectors who were meant to guard him are mysteriously absent, and Cesare himself is conveniently at hand to oversee the investigation. The conclusion, at least, the official one, is that Alfonso's enemies have returned to finish the job. Rome, of course, isn't fooled. The true story, everyone knows, is bloodier and much closer to home. Lucrezia is devastated. You witness her grief firsthand, raw, genuine, and yet somehow dignified. She locks herself away, refusing comfort or explanation, and for several days the papal apartments are eerily silent. When Alfonso finally dies of his injuries, the city erupts with speculation. Some say Cesare did the deed to free himself from Neapolitan entanglements. Others insist it was the Pope, weary of a son-in-law who no longer served his purposes. The darkest rumours, the ones whispered only behind bolted doors, claim that Lucrezia herself played a part. After all, who else had so much to gain and so much to lose? If you're expecting justice, don't hold your breath. Cesare is untouchable, now openly discarding the cardinal's red hat in favour of armour and conquest. The Pope grieves in public, but in private he pivots to the next round of political manoeuvring. Lucrezia, meanwhile, must pick up the shattered pieces of her reputation yet again. She dresses in deepest mourning, attends every mass for her dead husband, and receives the city's condolences with a poise that's part habit, part necessity. The fact that she's pregnant with Alfonso's child adds another layer to the tragedy, and the baby Rodrigo, a living reminder of lost hope, quickly becomes both shield and vulnerability. Rome doesn't wait long to judge. Overnight, new stories blossom like mold. Some say Lucrezia is cursed, that all who love her meet violent ends. Others claim she's now the most eligible widow in Italy, ripe for another dynastic marriage. Satirical poems circulate, painting her as a black widow, a sorceress, the Vatican's own Medusa. Even her enemies can't agree whether she's an innocent victim or the city's most artful villain. Life inside the Vatican doesn't get any easier. The Borgia court is still a dangerous place, perhaps even more so now that Cesare is unleashed. You watch as he struts through the corridors in fine Spanish armour, making open threats against anyone who dares question his power. He throws banquets in honour of his military victories, drinks too much, and sometimes vanishes for days on mysterious errands. There's a new chill between Cesare and Lucrezia. You sense both loyalty and deep weariness. Blood is thicker than water, but in the Borgia world, not by much. Amid all this, Lucrezia's mother, Vannozza, reappears at court. She's older, shrewder, and perhaps the only person in Rome who truly understands her daughter's plight. The two women meet privately, speaking quietly in the gardens or behind thick wooden doors. You can only imagine the advice Vannozza gives. Trust no one, play your part. Remember you are a Borgia, and the world will never forgive you for surviving. Sometimes you hear laughter, dark, tired, but real. Even here, there's room for a little mother-daughter mischief. Yes, the Renaissance invented mom jokes too. Outside, the city remains restless. The Pope's enemies multiply. The French threaten invasion, the Orsini and Colonna families are sharpening their knives, and rumours swirl that even some cardinals want Alexander VI removed. The city's mood darkens. Nights grow louder, more violent, more desperate. Through it all, Lucrezia walks a razor's edge, her every word weighed, her every move watched, her future entirely uncertain. One day, you're present at a tense audience as ambassadors from Ferrara arrive. They're there on a delicate mission to propose yet another marriage for Lucrezia, this time to Alfonso d'Este, heir to the Duchy of Ferrara. The Este family is proud, cultivated, and almost as notorious for its internal squabbles as the Borgias themselves. The match would offer Lucrezia a chance to escape Rome's suffocating embrace and become duchess in a city that allegedly values art over assassination. But nothing in Lucrezia's life is simple. The Ferrara envoys are blunt. They don't want the Pope's whore tainting their noble line. They demand a massive dowry, swearing up and down that their bride will never be allowed to bring Roman wickedness into Ferrara. The negotiations are tense and humiliating. You watch Lucrezia's jaw tighten with every demand, her father determined to see her safely away from Rome and to secure Ferrara as an ally, offers treasure, palaces, even papal legates. The deal is struck, but it's clear Lucrezia will have to work twice as hard to earn even a sliver of respect in her new home. In the meantime, Alfonso of Aragon's funeral passes in a haze of incense and whispered curses. You stand with Lucrezia as she bids a final farewell, her black veil wet with tears. She's lost a husband, a friend, and for now her place in the only world she's ever known. As the crowds disperse, you glimpse Trezea watching from a distant archway, face unreadable. Back in her chambers, Lucrezia finds solace in her child and her small circle of trusted confidantes. She throws herself into charity, sponsoring convents and commissioning art. It's both a public relations campaign and an act of real kindness. Lucrezia has always had a gift for winning hearts, even among those determined to hate her, but the shadow of scandal never quite lifts. Servants whisper about what really happened to her husbands, and new suitors, sent by ambitious families from across Europe, hover at the edge of her life, each one a new potential disaster. One night you find Lucrezia on the balcony, watching the moonlight glint off Rome's domes and towers. "Do you think the world will ever remember me as anything but a Borgia?" she asks, her voice tired but defiant. It's a fair question, and for the first time you realize she's as much a prisoner of her legend as of her blood. Her story is already becoming myth, part cautionary tale, part tabloid fodder, and all heartbreak. But there's no time for pity. With her father and Caesar still at the height of their power, a new chapter is about to begin. Lucrezia will soon be sent north, to Ferrara, where new challenges and a new host of enemies await. She survived poisoned rumours, arranged marriages, and more than one near-fatal accident. She's a survivor, and Rome, for all its cruelty. You might think by now that Lucrezia Borgia would be done with scandal, that losing two husbands, one to annulment, one to murder, being painted as the Vatican's femme fatale, and navigating the endless blood feuds of Rome, would earn her at least a little peace. But no, if you thought Renaissance rumour mills ever ran out of fuel, you haven't been paying attention. As soon as Alfonso of Aragon's funeral candles sputter out, the real whispers begin. Is Lucrezia truly just a pawn? Or is she, as Rome's wits claim, her father's whore, her brother's lover, and the most dangerous woman in Christendom? You step into the heart of a city where gossip is both blood sport and currency. This time, the game isn't only about power or marriage contracts. It's about survival in a world that loves to eat its own legends. The rumours are everywhere, from the lowest market stalls to the highest Vatican towers. Even the ancient statues seem to watch Lucrezia pass, stone eyes full of judgment and a little morbid curiosity. Let's be honest, the Renaissance loved a spicy story, and the Borgias provided an endless supply. You hear them all, that Lucrezia has a secret passage to the Pope's private chambers, that she and Caesar exchange gifts of poison rings, that her son Rodrigo is actually her brother's child, or her father's, depending on which street corner you're listening to. She's the original it girl for all the wrong reasons, and every banquet, every carriage ride, every closed door is grist for the rumour mill. You walk with Lucrezia through the Vatican gardens, her black veil trailing over dewy grass. Even the air seems to tingle with stories. Ladies-in-waiting curtsy with just a little too much interest. Priests cross themselves after she passes, old crones whisper as she hands out alms, then pocket the coins and add another detail to their ever-expanding legend. Did you see the way she smiled? That's the smile of a woman who's killed 2 husbands and gotten away with it. And yet, Lucrezia endures. She learns to move through Rome as though she is made of air, present, yet untouchable. You notice her responses are always measured, never defensive. When an ambassador from Venice asks if the rumors about her and Cesare are true, she only smiles and answers, "The truth is, whatever Rome wishes it to be, it's a masterclass in damage control, turning poison into perfume, scandal into armor." Still, some days are harder than others. You see her reading letters in a sunlit window, face falling at some particularly nasty bit of slander. Even a Borgia has a breaking point. The story about her poisoning a rival with a bouquet of lilies makes her laugh. The one about Cesare sneaking into her bedchamber, less so. The weight of those stories grows heavier with every repetition. Rome has a short memory for facts and a long memory for lies. It doesn't help that Cesare himself fans the flames. Freed now from the church and living his best warlord life, he stalks through the city as both bodyguard and enigma. He visits Lucrezia often, their meetings always closely observed, their conversations always sparking new waves of gossip. Is he protecting her, manipulating her, or both? At a masked ball, you catch Cesare whispering in Lucrezia's ear. She laughs, the room freezes, and before anyone can blink, someone is writing a new poem about the incestuous Borgia siblings. You almost admire the efficiency. The pressure cooker of rumor reaches a new boil when a servant girl claims to have seen Lucrezia and Rodrigo Borgia alone together late at night, and not in a fatherly way. The city's anti-Borgia factions have a field day. Their pamphlets full of venom. You find one pasted to a tavern door. The Pope's whore gives birth to her own brother. You almost expect a punchline, but the joke is on Lucrezia. Even the Este family in Ferrara, who are negotiating her next marriage, keep a careful ledger of her sins and demand ever higher dowries to compensate for the damage to their reputation. Lucrezia's answer, as always, is to keep moving. She throws herself into acts of public charity, founding orphanages, commissioning chapels, paying for mass weddings. If Rome insists on calling her a devil, she'll outshine every saint in the city. You attend a service where she donates a fortune for plague relief. The priest blesses her, and 3 old ladies hiss that it must be blood money. You almost expect Lucrezia to roll her eyes, but instead she smiles, kneels, and says her prayers louder than ever. Yet, the truth is more complex than any headline. You see, up close, the exhaustion in her face, the careful kindness she shows to servants and children, the way she looks at portraits of her lost husbands and siblings. If Lucrezia is a monster, she's the most reluctant one in history. For all the venom, life goes on. The Pope, busy with wars and politics, leans on Lucrezia more than ever to keep Rome's women and charities in line. You see her writing letters to cardinals, hosting poetry readings, smoothing over feuds between noble families. In private, she confides in a handful of loyal friends, her mother, the Nozza, and a clever Spanish confidant named Angela. Together they scheme ways to deflect the worst of the slander, but it's an endless game of whack-a-mole. Stamp out one scandal, and 2 more take its place. The ultimate weapon in the Borgia arsenal, though, is humour. In a world determined to cast her as villain, Lucrezia learns to laugh first. When a clumsy nobleman tries to impress her with a dirty limerick about the Pope's whore, she fires back with a cutting joke about his bald patch and his even bolder poetry. The crowd howls, the rumour loses steam. For every slander, she offers a sly smile or a witty retort, turning her enemy's ammunition into confetti. Still, even a Borgia's nerves fray under constant fire. You walk with Lucrezia through the Vatican at dusk, where even the shadows feel thick with accusation. "I sometimes wish," she says quietly, "that I could be judged for my own actions, not just my family's." It's a rare admission, and you realize that beneath the legend is a young woman who longs, more than anything, for the freedom to define her own story. As winter turns to spring, a new chapter opens. The negotiations with Ferrara conclude. Lucrezia is to marry Alfonso d'Este, a match that will take her north far from the Vatican, but never far from her past. As she packs for her journey, Rome breathes a sigh of mingled relief and regret. Some hope she'll redeem herself in Ferrara, others wager that she'll destroy yet another great family. Only Lucrezia knows what she intends. Before she leaves, you attend one last Vatican banquet. The room sparkles with music and laughter, but under every word lies a threat or a memory. You realize Lucrezia is neither victim nor villain, but something rarer still, a survivor. As she lifts her glass for a final toast, the city... You don't even get a chance to exhale before Lucrezia's world shifts yet again. The deal is done. The gold is paid. The envoys have been bribed, threatened or convinced, and you're whisked north, out of the poisoned luxury of Rome and into the chilly, watchful grandeur of Ferrara. For most, this would be a fresh start. For Lucrezia Borgia, it's a test on an entirely new battlefield, a place where her notorious past precedes her by 100 gossipy letters, and where every frosty stare dares her to prove she's more than the sum of her scandals. The journey itself is an ordeal. You ride for days through mud and rain, escorted by papal guards and a Ferrarian welcome party that's less than enthusiastic. Every village you pass has heard the rumours, sometimes before they've even heard the wedding bells. You catch the odd jeer from a roadside crowd, hide the husbands, someone shouts, and you can't even blame them for the originality. The air grows colder, the sky darker, and by the time the towers of Ferrara finally rise from the river mists, you get the feeling this is a place where the walls have memories, and long ones at that. Lucrezia's arrival at the Este court is nothing short of ceremonial frostbite. The city's nobility lines up to greet her, each family head weighed down with years of their own feuds and a collective anxiety about what Rome has sent us. Alfonso d'Este, her new husband, stands in stiff brocade, managing a smile that's equal parts welcome and warning. His mother, Duchess Eleonora, regards Lucrezia like an exotic animal, beautiful, perhaps dangerous, and best kept at arm's length. The court ladies, resplendent in Ferraran velvets, curtsy just low enough to show they're doing it under protest. You watch as Lucrezia dismounts and presents herself, her face a mask of humility, her eyes quietly defiant. She is, as always, well prepared, a gift for the Duchess, a gentle compliment for every noble woman, and the kind of carefully rehearsed innocence that leaves no room for mockery. Even so, the rumours chase her through the corridors. That's her, the one with the poison ring. They say her hair turned black from grief, or maybe witchcraft. Do you think she really had her husband strangled? Ferrara, for all its reputation as a haven of arts and letters, is a city just as invested in reputation as Rome, only less honest about it. You see it at dinner that first night, a grand hall, candles flickering in polished silver, and every eye fixed on the new Duchess. The conversation is pointed, hunting, music, local gossip, but always looping back to subtle digs at Rome. Lucrezia responds with warmth, knowledge, and a few carefully placed jokes about Vatican intrigue. Someone tests her by referencing a notorious Borgia scandal. She laughs lightly, sips her wine, and replies, "Ah, but Ferrara has its own ghosts, doesn't it?" Even the Duchess cracks a smile. Still, trust here is earned by the teaspoon, not the bucket. Lucrezia quickly realizes that, in Ferrara, power comes from soft skills, managing the ducal household, making allies among the city's patrician families, and winning over the artists and poets who define court fashion. Her new husband Alfonso is an engineer at heart, less interested in romance than in fortifying the city walls and improving cannon designs. Their marriage, at least at first, is all cautious courtesies and polite avoidance. You catch them walking the gardens in silence, each lost in thought, occasionally exchanging a wry smile that says, "We're both prisoners here, aren't we?" If you expected the drama to end at the city gates, you haven't learned your lesson. Within weeks, Ferrara's court is humming with intrigue. Old Este rivals test the new Duchess with small slights. A snubbed invitation here, a cold shoulder there. Lucrezia's Borgia reputation is both a weapon and a curse. Some see her as a threat, others a pawn to be exploited. The local clergy, uneasy about her papal bloodline, publicly praise her piety while privately warning their flocks not to let the children near her. One bishop even arranges an exorcism just in case. You can't make this up. And yet, Lucrezia does what she always does. She adapts. You watch as she builds her own network of allies, focusing on the things Ferrara truly values: culture, charity, and spectacle. She throws lavish banquets that outshine anything the city's seen, invites famous poets, Ariosto among them, and quietly funds local hospitals. You see her slip into a convent one morning to donate funds for orphaned girls, slipping out again before the abbess can finish her speech of thanks. Her popularity with the city's ordinary people grows quickly, much to the irritation of the local grandees. Of course, not everyone is so easily won over. Alfonso's sister Isabella, a formidable match in wit and influence, regards Lucrezia as a rival. Their exchanges are icy but civil, like two chess masters maneuvering for the same square. Still, as the months roll by, grudging respect develops. Isabella admits, in private, that Lucrezia is far more capable than expected, certainly more charming than some of our own. You witness the slow evolution of Lucrezia and Alfonso's relationship. At first he's distant, wary of both her power and her past. But as Lucrezia demonstrates her competence balancing accounts, smoothing court disputes, and even helping organize military defenses, Alfonso comes to value her as a true partner. There are even moments of tenderness, a shared laugh at a badly sung madrigal, a late-night walk along the castle ramparts, a quiet conversation over candlelight about the future of Ferrara. And yet, the world beyond their walls never quite lets them forget the past. Letters from Rome arrive, some full of family news, others thinly veiled instructions from Pope Alexander. Cesare, now openly building his own private kingdom in central Italy, writes often, sometimes with brotherly affection, sometimes with threats. Lucrezia is caught between the demands of her birth family and the expectations of her new one. You sense the strain. Every decision she makes is double-checked, every word passed for hidden meaning. Rumors still chase her. Now, with a Ferraran twist, when a courtier falls ill, the old whispers about poison resurface. When a nobleman's son is caught in a scandal, somehow Lucrezia's name finds its way into the story. Yet, through it all, she never loses her composure. You see her at the grandest parties, dancing and laughing as if none of it matters. You see her at prayer in the cathedral, head bowed, lips moving in silent defiance of every lie told about her. As the seasons turn, you realize something remarkable. Lucrezia is not merely surviving Ferrara, she's thriving. Her influence grows in every direction, from the ducal council, to the artist's studio, to the city's poorest wards. For the first time in years, she seems almost content, though you suspect she will always carry a shadow of Rome wherever she goes. At a winter festival, you watch her accept the city's cheers, her face illuminated by torchlight and bonfires. The children sing her name, the grandees, some grudging, some sincere, lift their goblets in her honor. You realize that in Ferrara, Lucrezia is slowly rewriting her story, one careful step at a time. But Rome is never far away, and the game is never truly over. As she looks out across the snowy rooftops, you sense Ferrara's winter passes into a vibrant spring, and you feel the city's rhythm pulsing stronger beneath Lucrezia's feet. The cold welcomes have softened, if not fully thawed, and the ducal palace is now a little less silent, a little more alive with color and music. But the shadow of Rome never vanishes entirely. The Borgia name still carries both danger and fascination, a fact that Lucrezia, always the realist, knows how to exploit. This is the season when a new side of her emerges, not just a survivor but a stateswoman, a cultural force, and much to the surprise of Machiavelli himself, a genuinely talented political player. You see it most clearly when you attend Ferrara's council meetings. The hall is a swirl of anxious faces, generals, bankers, scholars, and a few family enemies, still pretending to be friends. At first, Lucrezia is little more than a silent observer, sitting with perfect posture while Alfonso debates fortifications and taxes. But she's listening, always listening. Her questions are sharp, her advice shrewd, and soon even the grumpiest old councillors begin turning to her for a second opinion. When plague strikes a neighbouring town, It's Lucrezia who organizes relief, balancing the city's budget to feed the hungry without emptying the treasury. When mercenaries riot over unpaid wages, she's the one who negotiates a compromise, using a combination of patience, gifts, and just enough veiled threat to remind everyone she's still a Borgia at heart. It's not just policy. Ferrara's court quickly becomes a magnet for artists, poets, and scholars. Ariosto recites verses in the Great Hall. Titian and Bellini students squabble over new commissions. You watch as Lucrezia hosts salons where musicians test new compositions. Philosophers debate theology, and young noble women learn that politics is more than embroidery. The city's culture blooms, and for a moment you might even mistake Ferrara for Florence on its best day, minus the Medici daggers, of course. Lucrezia's mastery of image is dazzling. She knows that every gesture is a message, every party a chess move. When rumors about poisoning swirl yet again, this time because a rival duchess falls ill after a banquet, Lucrezia responds not with anger, but with generosity. She visits the woman's sickbed with a basket of fruit and the city's best doctor in tow. The patient recovers, the gossip cools, and more than one Farron matron is forced to admit that the Borgia witch can also be an angel of mercy. It helps, of course, that Machiavelli himself is watching. The famous Florentine envoy visits Ferrara, taking copious notes and sending sly, admiring letters back to Florence. He calls Lucrezia a woman of uncommon prudence and rare political instinct. Praise so carefully phrased it almost sounds like an insult, but everyone knows he's impressed. At dinners, you catch Lucrezia parrying Machiavelli's pointed questions with a blend of wit and charm. They say your family governs by poison and steel. He teases one night. And yours by account book and gossip, she answers, which is far more dangerous. The table laughs and you realize Lucrezia is not simply surviving court politics. She's redefining them, yet the balancing act is relentless. Alfonso, still wary of outside influence, sometimes resents Lucrezia's growing power. The couple quarrel quietly, in private, over money, military policy, and the constant intrusion of Borgia messengers from Rome. You see the tension in small things, a cool nod across the chapel, a too formal letter, but you also see respect, and gradually, something like trust. When a neighboring lord threatens Ferrara's southern border, it's Lucrezia's diplomatic network, not Alfonso's soldiers, that secures peace. The Este family, once her sternest critics, begin to see her as an asset rather than a liability. Meanwhile, Lucrezia's private life is a study in complexity. Her son, Rodrigo, is raised in both Borgia and Este traditions, taught to ride and fence, but also to read Latin and recite Virgil. She bears more children, navigating the razor's edge between hope and heartbreak, because not every baby survives, and each loss deepens the ache she carries from Rome. Her friends at court are carefully chosen, a poet with a taste for risky satire, a Spanish lady-in-waiting who has survived even more scandals than Lucrezia herself, and a clever local doctor who claims he can cure anything but Borgia luck. You begin to notice a subtle change in Ferrara itself. The city's merchants prosper, its artists grow bolder, and even the most stubborn old families find themselves grudgingly grateful for the stability Lucrezia brings. Ferrara becomes the envy of northern Italy, and when famine threatens the region, the Duchess's swift action keeps the city safe, winning her praise even from the Pope, who never misses an opportunity to remind Europe whose daughter she is. But Lucrezia's success is not without cost. With power comes enemies, and with every diplomatic victory, the rumors grow sharper. Ferrara's court is never free of spies, some sent by Cesare, now carving out his own brutal domain in central Italy, some by the Orsini and Colonna, a few perhaps by even more distant and ambitious rivals. You see Lucrezia reading coded letters by candlelight, never fully trusting even those who swear loyalty. Her past is always at the edge of every conversation. More than once you hear a guest at table refer to her, half joking, as Our Lady of the Poisoned Chalice. And yet, Lucrezia turns the old slurs into a kind of personal brand. If you're going to be accused of being a witch, you might as well make magic happen. She hosts masques with subtle themes of redemption and transformation. She supports convents and universities, funds new bridges, and yes, occasionally hires a magician or two for festival entertainment. The city starts to joke, nervously at first, then with genuine affection that Ferrara is charmed and Lucrezia is the one casting the spell. Still, the Borgia name is a double-edged sword. When Cedre sends for help in his endless wars, Lucrezia is caught in a dangerous tug-of-war between her brother's ambitions and her husband's interests. You see her broker secret deals, sending money and advice while never quite betraying Ferrara's safety. The Pope's death looms on the horizon, a slow, ominous drumbeat in every letter from Rome. With Alexander VI's health failing, everyone knows the Borgia fortunes could rise or fall in a heartbeat, and Lucrezia must prepare for either. One summer evening, you're present, as Lucrezia hosts a great feast for Ferrara's guilds. She rises to speak, thanking her adopted city and quietly reminding the crowd of all that has been built together since her arrival. The applause is real, the mood celebratory, but you see something else in her eyes, a flash of fear, a quick calculation of what comes next. For in Italy, no reign is secure, and no reputation permanent. The world is changing fast. New alliances, new wars, new threats even from distant France and Spain. But as you watch Lucrezia laugh and dance among the torchlit courtyards, you realize she's done what few thought possible. The Borgia princess is now Ferrara's duchess in truth, and if the step carefully, Ferrara by night is a city of shadows, and tonight those shadows seem to lean in closer, whispering tales of poison, betrayal, and secrets too dangerous for daylight. You'd like to think Lucrezia Borgia could finally escape her reputation, but the truth is, some legends grow only more vivid the further you get from their source. It's time for the stories of poison rings, clandestine agents, and those infamous dark arts that follow the Borgia name like a shadow. Even after years in Ferrara, Lucrezia cannot quite escape the rumours that she's Italy's deadliest femme fatale. And let's be honest, if you're a Renaissance noble with a dramatic flair, nothing says "don't mess with me" like being accused of mixing a little arsenic in the soup. You hear the stories at every banquet, murmured into goblets of wine. Lucrezia with a hollowed-out emerald ring, filled with deadly venom. Lucrezia passing a tainted glass to a rival suitor. Lucrezia overseeing secret laboratories beneath her apartments where apothecaries and alchemists whip up elixirs of both love and death. You slip through Ferrara's echoing corridors, noticing how every spilled cup is eyed with suspicion. Court ladies test their drinks by passing them to a pet dog. Poor things, always getting the worst end of Renaissance life. And even the jesters sample their food with a little extra caution. When a minor courtier falls mysteriously ill after a dinner, the city erupts with fresh speculation. A Borgia never forgives, and never forgets, whispers the blacksmith's wife at market. Best keep on her good side, eh? Lucrezia, for her part, cultivates just enough mystery to keep everyone guessing. She never admits to anything, but she doesn't exactly deny the rumors either. Sometimes you see her wear a ring so large and ornate it's practically a billboard. Try me, if you dare. She laughs off the stories in public, but you catch her sharing a quiet, knowing glance with her most trusted friends. Is it all a performance? Maybe. In Renaissance Italy, reputation is half your defense, and Lucrezia has learned to turn legend into leverage. You become aware of the secret side of court life. There's the official version, dances, sermons, treaties, and then there's the real business done after midnight. Spies and informers pass through Lucrezia's orbit. Old family retainers from Rome, new friends among Ferrara's own political underworld. You witness her receiving reports about plots and potential threats, weighing each with a level head and surprising detachment. Once a would-be assassin is caught just outside the palace. He disappears quietly, never seen again. Nobody asks too many questions. The Este family itself is no stranger to intrigue. Alfonso, Lucrezia's husband, has his own network of agents, loyal to Ferrara before anything else. Sometimes you sense a tension between their two camps. Who's truly protecting who? Is Lucrezia running her own little intelligence agency, or is she simply a conduit between powerful men? You see her deftly navigate these waters, keeping both sides just uncertain enough to prevent either from turning against her outright. The myth of the Borgia poison is almost as persistent as the Borgia name. You see it referenced in local art, an allegorical painting here, a scandalous play there. The townsfolk swap tales of a mysterious cantarella, a secret substance said to kill instantly, undetectable and untraceable. Did Lucrezia ever use it? Did she even possess it? The historians still argue, but in Ferrara, fact and fiction are hopelessly entwined. Still, not every death or illness can be laid at Lucrezia's door. Disease, poor hygiene, and Renaissance medical treatments. Here, drink this mercury, it'll do wonders for your cough. Kill far more people than any poison ever could. But it's always more satisfying somehow to blame the notorious Duchess. After all, what's a good party without a little mortal peril? But there's another side to this legend. You see Lucrezia's careful, almost scientific interest in herbs and medicines. Her mother Venozza taught her some. The rest she learns from Ferrara's apothecaries and nuns. She uses her knowledge for healing as often as for self-protection, tending the sick in convents, preparing restorative tonics for friends and family. Ironically, the woman painted as a murderer is also one of the best amateur doctors in Ferrara. It's a small joke among her closest circle. If Lucrezia brings you a cup, drink it. Unless you've been truly awful, then maybe just sniff it first. Even Machiavelli, returning briefly on a diplomatic visit, can't resist poking fun. At a dinner, he lifts his goblet in a toast. To our gracious hostess, may her wine remain as sweet as her reputation is sharp. The hall laughs, and Lucrezia only arches an eyebrow. Sweetness is overrated, Signor Machiavelli, she replies. But I promise you, my kitchen is strictly supervised. You can feel the room breathe a little easier, grateful she's chosen to play along rather than take offense. As you watch Lucrezia move through the maze of Ferraran society, you realize that the poison legend serves her well. It keeps bullies and would-be rivals at bay. It makes the superstitious think twice before crossing her, and, in a twist only history could invent, it allows her to protect those she truly cares about. A whisper of danger is often more powerful than an army of guards. Still, life is never free of risk. Rival courtiers still try to trip her up. Spies from Rome and Venice slip through the city, searching for leverage. Even her own husband sometimes seems to wonder just how much truth lies behind the stories. But Lucrezia plays the long game. She keeps her allies close, her enemies closer, and her legend closest of all. The real poison in Ferrara, you come to realize, is fear, and nobody wields it more skillfully than the Duchess, who learned in Rome's deadliest courts how to survive by being a little bit more terrifying than her reputation. If that means wearing a few suspicious rings and letting the world wonder, so be it. You leave the palace one evening, the scent of night-blooming jasmine thick in the air, and you swear you hear someone whisper, "She's not the monster they say she is." You think after the poison rings and whispered threats, that Lucrezia Borgia might be allowed to settle into a life of uninterrupted comfort in Ferrara. But the universe, or at least Renaissance Italy, doesn't deal in happy endings, not even for the best player. As you continue to walk in her shadow, you discover a softer but far more haunting story. Lucrezia the mother, Lucrezia the grieving sister and daughter, Lucrezia trying to find real love or simply a moment of peace, while loss piles up around her like autumn leaves. Motherhood is both balm and torment for Lucrezia. She gives birth several times during her years in Ferrara, each pregnancy watched by a city still eager for an heir, but still whispering its doubts. Her firstborn son, Rodrigo, named for her father, is the center of her world. You see her with him in the palace gardens, teaching him to feed songbirds, reading him tales of saints and warriors, skipping the bits about poisoning, at least for now. When he's old enough, she oversees his lessons, music, Latin, even a little fencing. For a few fleeting years, you catch glimpses of something like ordinary happiness, but tragedy keeps its own calendar. Not all of Lucrezia's children survive infancy. Some are lost before they take their first breath. Others die young from fevers that no amount of prayer or herbal medicine can cure. Each loss is a blow that leaves Lucrezia quieter, more introspective. You see her late at night, slipping into the chapel with only a candle for company, kneeling for hours before a statue of the Virgin. Once, when she thinks she's alone, you hear her whisper, "Why do you take them from me?" It's not a question for any living ear. As the years pass, her surviving children become her anchors. Rodrigo, bright and eager, is her hope. Ercole, her second son, is more reserved, a child who prefers puzzles to parades. The Este family, eager to secure the line, presses Lucrezia for more heirs. Each new pregnancy is both celebrated and feared. The stakes higher every time. The pressure is enormous. Be fertile, be healthy, be the perfect duchess. The city watches her belly more than her policies, and Lucrezia learns to smile through morning sickness and swollen ankles. Always on display, always Borgia. But it's not just motherhood that carves these lines of sorrow. News from Rome arrives with the weight of fresh loss. Her father, Pope Alexander VI, weakens and dies amid a flurry of conspiracy theories and genuine grief. Caesar, once so bold, finds his power crumbling. He is chased from his territories, betrayed, and finally dies far from the glory he once imagined. The Borgia dynasty, that roaring engine of her youth, is now reduced to a cautionary tale. You watch Lucrezia read the letters, hands trembling, tears threatening. She mourns them all, even when the world expects her to dance for their downfall. Personal heartbreak is not confined to family. Alfonso, her husband, for all their careful diplomacy, is sometimes distant, sometimes brusque, sometimes more concerned with cannons than with comfort. Still, over the years, you witness their guarded partnership evolve. There are nights when he comes to her chambers not with orders or complaints, but simply to sit and talk, to share a drink, to ask about her childhood. Once you hear them laughing, truly laughing, at the expense of a particularly pompous visiting ambassador. Yet, affection here is a quiet, private thing, never grand, always shadowed by politics and the ever-present threat of outside danger. Loneliness finds Lucrezia even in her busiest moments. She writes poetry, often melancholy, sometimes devotional, sometimes so personal she hides it from everyone but her closest friend, Angela. The two women share secrets, jokes, and when the night is especially dark, tears. Lucrezia commissions portraits, perhaps hoping that the paint will capture some fleeting memory of a child, a sibling, a happier moment that is otherwise lost to time. Affairs, too, make their mark on her life. She is admired, sometimes passionately, by men at court, poets, nobles, even a priest or two. Rumors of secret lovers swirl around her just as thickly in Ferrara as they did in Rome. Occasionally the stories have a kernel of truth. You sense a brief intense connection with a courtier, private glances at a mask, hurried notes exchanged beneath the guise of patronage. But always, the walls of duty close in. Love, for a woman like Lucrezia, is an interval, never a destination. Religion is both a comfort and a weapon. In public, Lucrezia is a paragon of piety, funding convents, supporting orphanages, championing the city's churches. You see her spend hours with nuns, discussing everything from theology to embroidery, and the respect she earns in these circles is deep and genuine. But it is also a shield. Piety becomes another way to answer scandal, to quiet enemies, to convince the Este family she belongs. Sometimes, as you follow her through the quiet cloisters, you wonder how much is faith and how much is strategy. Lucrezia, ever diplomatic, would say both. The Borgia shadow does not fade. Each tragedy, each fresh rumor is weighed and remembered. Yet, even as grief marks her features and time leaves its trace, you notice a growing strength. Lucrezia endures. She becomes Ferrara's heart, a patroness to the arts, a peacemaker in times of strife, a voice of calm when the city is swept by plague or war. It's not a fairy tale, but it is, in its own way, a triumph. You walk with her through the city on a spring morning. The people greet her with respect, even affection. A baker hands her a loaf for your little ones, Duchess. Children bow, mothers smile, priests bless her passage. In those moments you see the true legacy of Lucrezia Borgia. Not the poison or the scandal, but a woman who survived more loss than most could bear, and still managed to leave the world more beautiful, if only for a while. There's a lesson in all of this. You suspect. History remembers the legends, incest, poison, ambition, but it forgets how much courage it takes, simply to keep going, to raise children, to hold a family together, to find light after loss. Lucrezia, walking beside you, offers a wry, tired smile. The world will always talk, she said. The bells of Rome toll for the Borgia era, their echoes fading over hills and rivers. reaching even the distant marble halls of Ferrara. News travels fast and hits hard. Pope Alexander VI is dead, his son Cesare disgraced and on the run, and all that once seemed unassailable about the Borgia name is now under siege. If you're expecting a Shakespearean fall, daggers in the night, tragic speeches, poetic justice, well, you're half right. But the collapse is less a single cataclysm, and more a slow, relentless unravelling. And through it all, Lucrezia Borgia, once the family's most glittering pawn, must find a way to outlast the fall of her house without getting crushed in the ruins. You first hear the news the way everyone in Ferrara does, whispered, then shouted, then sung from pulpit and piazza. Pope Alexander VI, Rodrigo Borgia, succumbs to a sudden illness. The details are, fittingly, murky. Some say poison, others fever. A few claim the devil finally came to collect what was owed. Rome goes wild. Cardinals lock themselves in fortified palaces, the Spanish contingent flees, and the papal throne becomes a game of musical chairs for every scheming Italian family. You can almost smell the panic from Ferrara. Lucrezia receives the news with a strange composure. You see her set aside the letter, close her eyes, and simply sit for a long, silent moment. She loved her father. Yes, despite his monstrous flaws, despite all the impossible expectations he placed on her, the loss is real, but so is the knowledge that the world is now more dangerous than ever for anyone with Borgia blood. The protection of the papacy, such as it was, is gone. Lucrezia's future, for the first time in her life, is entirely her own, and entirely uncertain. Cesare, once the terror of Italy, is hunted, abandoned by old allies, and stricken by disease. You watch as each letter from Rome brings news of another defeat, another friend turned foe. Cesare's star falls fast. He is arrested, escapes, and ultimately meets his end. Not in glorious battle, but in a muddy Spanish ambush. You sense a complicated grief in Lucrezia, a mix of relief and heartbreak. For all their closeness and the ugly rumors, Cesare was her brother, her greatest champion, sometimes her jailer, sometimes her shield. With him gone, there's no one left who truly remembers the Rome of their youth. The rest of the Borgia clan fares no better. Properties are seized, loyalists exiled, and those who cannot cut ties with the family are quietly erased from public life. You hear the old Borgia servants in Ferrara muttering about the days of gold, now nothing more than stories to scare children and amuse drunk poets. In Ferrara, Lucrezia's position is suddenly precarious. There are whispers among the Este family. Will the Pope's bastardess bring shame or war to our house? Alfonso, calculating as ever, is quick to distance himself from his wife's Roman past when it suits him, though you catch moments of genuine tenderness as well. A hand on her shoulder, a private word of comfort, still you see the tension. Ferrara, always proud of its independence, now worries the shadow of the Borgia downfall might bring unwanted attention from Rome, France, or worse. Lucrezia, always a survivor, throws herself into her duchess duties. With Ferrara's court looking to her for stability, she leans into a role as a patroness of the arts, a peacemaker, and a model of piety. She redoubles her efforts to support local convents, charities, and hospitals, work that now serves both as penance for the Borgia name and as insurance for her children's future. The city, uncertain at first, begins to accept her not as a dangerous outsider, but as a part of its own story. You witness the slow, fragile birth of trust, even affection. But the scars are deep. Lucrezia is often alone in the ducal palace, her past too loud for comfort. Letters from old friends in Rome dwindle and then stop altogether. At night you find her walking the echoing galleries, gazing out at the Po River, perhaps wondering if anything she built will last longer than the rumors that chased her here. You see her praying, head bowed, asking for mercy, not just for herself, but for the souls of those lost in the Borgia storm. It isn't all mourning and regret. With Rome now an uncertain prize, Ferrara becomes a haven for those displaced by the shifting tides of Italian politics. Lucrezia welcomes refugees, artists, and former courtiers with a grace that's half mercy, half careful self-preservation. She hosts salons that draw some of the most creative minds of her age: Ariosto, the poet, Dosso Dossi, the painter, musicians whose compositions will echo centuries beyond her own life. Yet, you also sense a tightening web of enemies. The Papal States are under new management, and the anti-Borgia faction still relishes any opportunity to tarnish her name. Even in Ferrara, some would prefer the Duchess quietly fade into the background. You see Lucrezia walking this tightrope daily, kind but never naive, generous but always watching for betrayal. She refuses to let her children be hostages to anyone's ambition, guarding them fiercely and arranging alliances with a mother's shrewdness. Meanwhile, the legends refuse to die. When a courtier falls ill, the old Borgia poison story is dusted off yet again. When a scandal erupts in another court, somehow a whisper of Lucrezia's name finds its way into the gossip. She endures, sighs, and sometimes, when she's certain nobody is listening, laughs at the sheer stubbornness of her own myth. But if history teaches anything, it's that legacies are written not just in the rise but in the endurance after the fall. You stand beside Lucrezia as she attends the wedding of one of her children, her eyes bright, her gown magnificent, her bearing regal as ever. She greets the guests with warmth, welcomes old rivals with grace, and for a moment, even her critics seem willing to admit, whatever the Borgia name once meant, its last daughter has made something new of it. As the night deepens and music floats from the palace windows, you realize that Lucrezia has survived her father, her brothers, and the violent twilight of her family's reign. She is no longer a pawn. Ferrara has learned to breathe easier. The city's once frosty courtiers now nod warmly as Lucrezia Borgia passes, her children flanking her like living proof that the Borgia bloodline, for all its notoriety, can yield both beauty and resilience. Yet beneath the surface, always, beneath the shadows linger. Lucrezia's final years are a masterclass in holding two worlds at once, the dazzling Duchess of Ferrara and the eternal exile from the world of Rome. Scandal and impossible expectations. The Ferrara of Lucrezia's maturity is a city transformed. Walk with her through the twisting streets and bustling markets. The children shout greetings, mothers bless her, merchants boast that their wares are fit for our Duchess. It's not mere performance. Lucrezia has earned this. You recall the famine years, when her swift action kept food on tables. You see the new convents, hospitals, and schools she sponsors, each brick a quiet rebuke to anyone who still calls her only the Pope's whore. Her cultural patronage, too, has left a deep mark. Ferrara's reputation as a centre of art and letters owes much to Lucrezia's vision. You listen to Ariosto reciting lines of Orlando Furioso in a crowded palace hall, the court swooning over new music and plays, painters clamouring for a commission from the Duchess who sees not only talent but potential. Her taste shapes the city's future, blending the grandeur of Rome with the elegant restraint of the Este family. A quiet irony, the woman accused of all the world's sins becomes a guardian of beauty, charity, and learning. Yet in the quiet spaces, the moonlit corridors, the candlelit chapel, the silent hours before dawn, you witness the cost of survival. The losses never fully leave her, the children lost in infancy, the father and brothers swallowed by history, the weight of every rumour and slight. Lucrezia prays for them all. She keeps her grief private, but you sometimes glimpse it in a faraway look or a sudden stillness, as if she's listening for voices only she can hear. Her relationship with Alfonso has settled into one of mutual respect, and in its own way, affection. They are partners now. She manages the court, he tends to the city's defence, and together they shield Ferrara from the constant intrigues of Italian politics. You catch them in unguarded moments, sharing a joke in the gardens or quietly conferring over the ducal accounts. Alfonso, so cautious for so long, has come to trust Lucrezia not just as a wife but as an equal. Lucrezia's children are her greatest joy and her greatest source of worry. She arranges strategic marriages, coaches them in the art of survival, and insists on their education in both letters and statecraft. You see her tender with the youngest, fierce with the eldest, careful never to let any one of them feel like just another piece in a political game. The older she gets, the more fiercely she protects their futures, not from swords and poison but from the burden of her own legend. She also finds time for herself. You watch as she retreats to her private study, filling pages with poetry, reflections, and letters never sent. She spends long afternoons tending her gardens or playing music, savouring the ordinary pleasures that were so rare in her Roman youth. On feast days, she rides out among the people, her presence both comfort and celebration, a living symbol that Ferrara is not just surviving, but flourishing. Still, not all wounds heal. The outside world, especially Rome, never lets her forget who she is. When a pope or king wishes to needle Ferrara, the old insults return. Watch your wine, Duchess. Guard your sons, Alfonso. Yet you notice that these barbs sting less and less. As the years pass, the city, and even much of Italy, has come to see Lucrezia's reality. Not just her reputation, she is no longer the subject of every salacious ballad, but a respected leader in her own right. As illness creeps into her life, fatigue, fevers, the aches that no doctor can quite cure, Lucrezia faces it with the same quiet courage she's shown all her life. She prepares for death as she lived, making peace with her enemies, ensuring her children's safety and entrusting Ferrara's future to those she trusts most. In her final months, she becomes almost serene, as if finally unburdened by the need to prove or defend herself. Her death, when it comes, is mourned deeply and widely. The city's bells toll, crowds gather, and even former rivals shed genuine tears. You stand among the mourners, feeling the weight of everything she survived and the measure of what she accomplished. It's not the end her enemies predicted. Lucrezia is remembered not for the scandals that haunted her, but for the strength, wit, and kindness she brought to Ferrara. In the end, the legend bends toward the truth. Years later, travelers in Ferrara point out her works, recite stories of her charity, and pass on tales of her cleverness, always with a smile. The rumors never die, but they become faint, distant echoes. Lucrezia Borgia remains a name you can't ignore, but for those who walked with her, even in imagination, she's something far more extraordinary. A survivor, a builder, a woman who refused to be only what others called her. Her story is almost done, but history and bedtime as one last word. It's a slow morning in Ferrara, and the city is just beginning to realize that it has outlived a legend. Lucrezia Borgia is gone, but her presence lingers, woven into the stones of the palace, alive in the rituals of the people, quietly pulsing through every corridor and courtyard she once called her own. You walk the streets in her absence, and everywhere you go, you find traces of her story: a hospital wing bearing her crest, a convent chapel she rebuilt after a flood, a musician playing an old tune she once favored in her private gardens. The very air feels softer for a moment, as if the city itself is pausing to take stock of what it has lost and what it has gained. The mourning is real and public, but it is also private and profound. You watch as Alfonso d'Este, now greyer and slower, receives condolences from every corner of Italy. You see her children grown dignified, somber, gathering not just to mourn, but to claim the legacy she fought to secure for them. The Este family, once so wary of their Borgia Duchess, now speaks of her with respect. There is a sense in Ferrara that the city's golden age, its era of creativity and peace, belonged as much to Lucrezia as to any prince or poet. In these final days, the old rumors flutter through the city like nervous swallows. Some can't resist the urge to whisper about poison and papal scandal. Others repeat stories of miracles, of how the Duchess' prayers saved whole neighborhoods from plague or famine. But those who truly knew Lucrezia, the merchants, the artists, the nuns, the gardeners, have their own tales to tell. They talk of a woman who listened when it mattered, who remembered birthdays and forgave slights, who could laugh at the world's cruelty and still insist on beauty. You hear over and over the phrase, "She was not what they said she was. She was better." For you, a shadow walker through her life, the last memories are of quiet strength. You recall Lucrezia's careful dignity when insulted, her deep affection for her children, her refusal to be broken by loss. She made her enemies irrelevant by outlasting them. She transformed scandal into charity, loss into community, legend into legacy. In the palace, there are rooms that feel a little colder now. The chapel where she once prayed is filled with flowers, and even the most hardened old courtiers stop there for a moment of silent thanks. The library she built, where artists and philosophers once debated by candlelight, is hushed. Her favourite books, worn at the edges, remain in their places, and in the city's gardens, new roses bloom, planted by the women of Ferrara in her memory. You realise as you make your final circuit of the city, that the world will never agree on who Lucrezia Borgia really was. Pope's whore, Royal Bastardess, poisoner, survivor, she was all these things and none, both less and so much more. The facts and the legends will always blur together, because that is what happens to women who refuse to die quietly in history's footnotes. What matters in the end is that Lucrezia endured. She remade herself over and over, until the city she once entered in scandal could not imagine itself without her. Ferrara moves on, as all cities must. The bells ring out for the next feast, children run through the piazzas, and artists hang new portraits in the halls where Lucrezia once reigned. Her memory grows gentler, less sharp, and maybe, on a warm evening, you catch a stray laugh or a faint scent of jasmine and wonder if the Duchess is walking with you still, just for a moment. She would have liked that. Now, as your eyes grow heavy and the night deepens, it's time to let go of the story and let its echoes lull you to sleep. The scandals and splendors of Renaissance Italy drift away, leaving only the hush of a city made kinder, wiser, and braver by a woman who refused to be defined by her enemies. Wind down. So now, as the last candle gutters out, let yourself sink into quiet. The clangor of Rome and Ferrara fades into a slow, silken hush. The marble halls, once so bright with rumor and rivalry, soften to shadows. Let the cool night air fill your lungs, carrying away the sharpness of scandal, the sting of old names, the echo of ancient bells. In this gentle darkness, you feel the centuries melt away, just stone moonlight, a whisper of silk at your shoulder. You're safe here, wrapped in the warmth of memory and the gentle wisdom that outlasts even the fiercest storm. Let the rise and fall of Lucrezia's life remind you that history is made not just of heroes and villains, but of survivors, of those who love fiercely, grieve deeply, and remake themselves again and again. Imagine the hush of a palace garden, roses blooming in the dusk, voices fading into song. All is calm, all is forgiven. Rest easy, traveler. Tonight the world's sharp edges are dulled, and every legend, even the wildest, gives way to peace. You have walked through scandal and beauty, through loss and triumph, and now you are home. Breathe slow. Sleep comes gently, and with it dreams sweet enough for even the most notorious duchess. Sweet dreams.